Lauren Laughs, a podcast dedicated to lore, Olympus, and Greek mythology. In this episode, we're discussing the first multi-part chapters from 170 to 172, open plots and cookies, and the Greek myth of the Taking of Persephone. Find us on SoundCloud as Lauren Laughs Podcast and YouTube under Lauren Laughs. I'm Greg, also known as King Pluto 97.
And I'm Sarah, otherwise known as Hekate.
I think last time you said Hekate, but I don't know. The points we'll be discussing are the fact that Hephaestus comes to visit Hera, and Zeus asks Echo why she's there, which poses the question, what happened between Zeus and Hephaestus? You're supposed to be keeping me updated, Zeus says to Echo. Why is he watching Hera? What's the arrangement between Zeus and Echo? And then Echo receives a message, but we don't see what it's about, because she's shocked. And then, Zeus gets funny, and she says, not everything is about you, before she runs away. Then Apollo comes to visit, and he has Demeter as a bird. He's been shot. He looks angry. There's Icar on his gold outfit. What did he and Zeus discuss? What did Zeus agree to? Because, he's not much of a diplomat. He always seems bored and doesn't really want to spend a lot of time doing his duty as a king, really. Diplomatic things seem to be more Hades things. And he just doesn't want to do the whole king thing.
The biggest thing is that they need to know that he's at Zeus's house.
He was covered in ichor, and he has Demeter as a bird in that cursed cage.
Yeah. Hermes arrives at Hades' house while Hades and Persephone are cooking. He comes to the door, and Persephone says to Hades that, and this is in quotes, they have my mom, and the trial starts tomorrow, which essentially gives them less than 24 hours to prepare for the trial. Understandably, Persephone has a panic attack, and we see Hades comforting her while she ends up looking rough and has plants growing out of the left side of her head. And I believe her hair is also out of control and long too. She knows she needs to face consequences, but doesn't think Zeus would be fair to her. Hades comforts her and holds her. Persephone says she's been living in a bubble and knew it had to pop soon, but she isn't ready for this to be over. Then she asks Hades if she can live in the underworld after all this is done. She doesn't want to go back to Olympus, seemingly because of Apollo. Hades also continues to comfort her. He says, we'll find an apartment that's a short 15-minute walk from his place. It'll be a penthouse with beautiful views, and it'll have a courtyard for her only. He said it'll have heated floors and a doorman who greets her every morning and every evening. Hades even says he'll help her take her groceries into the apartment. And as he continues to speak, she starts to fall asleep. He puts her in his own bed this time, which seems to make her more comfortable and relaxed. He may have done this because he was concerned that she could go into hibernation. So he keeps her close to him in case she needs more close contact or to be reassured again. At the end of the chapter, we see Hades leaving a phone message, a threat that he sends to Zeus. Zeus has crossed the line. Hades warned him before, in a previous chapter, when they were reviewing the report of Persephone, and he basically said, is this the line that you want to draw in the sand, in reference to him going after Persephone, just to get more respect from everyone. What happened between Zeus and Hephaestus? We'll cover this in another episode, but there is a myth about Zeus, or sometimes Hera, throwing him off the mountain because of his birth defects. I wonder how the series will reference this. Do you have any thoughts?
I mean, like, when I was researching, like, before they throw him off the mountain, like, either one, I think, Hephaestus actually has, like, an argument with Zeus, and then he gets, like, either injured somehow, or, like, everyone becomes insulted, and, then, like, afterwards he's sort of, like, exiled and may have been thrown off the Mount of Olympus, but, like, it was hard to find out because obviously the whole throwing Hephaestus off the top of a mountain is quite famous. It kind of overshadows everything. So we know that there was an argument, but it could have been with Hera and Hephaestus, or it could have been with Zeus and Hephaestus, because I think Zeus tries to protect Hera, but then he doesn't really think that she's strong. But, like, she's very strong. Like, he just doesn't see her power. Because she's very emotionally strong, putting up with, like, all his nonsense. But he doesn't really see it like that.
As a side note, you and I talked about this before, but she's also just a better diplomat as well, too. There's elements of her. She seems almost like she's a little bit more intelligent, too.
She is a good diplomat.
Yeah.
But at the same time, she does dismiss a couple things that are really important, like that one time when Hebe's like, you know, you don't, like, I think it was like, you don't want Hades to come round. So, the next point we've got is, how will Demeter react to Persephone's closeness to Hades? I mean, like, this is, like, way back when, and I honestly don't remember it. It does sound like kind of a fever dream, because there's so many chapters in to this series, but, like, I think there was art that originally, Rachel did and released on, like, Instagram or something that was supposed to be canon, and, you know, because we saw, she sneaks into Hades' room in the mortal realm as a butterfly.
Right.
And there's that whole introduction. And then I think this is after this, like, art that Rachel did. And Persephone goes, his face is aesthetically pleasing to me, and Demeter just makes a face. And then she supposedly goes and gets Hades drunk, so he forgets about the pink nymph, which is really the goddess. Which makes sense, really. I mean, like, from my point of view, she's been trying to ward off men from this secret daughter that she has, and she doesn't want anyone to know.
Right.
So the fact that she's kind of in love with this guy that she only just met, like, Persephone's not really had any experience with men at that point, and, like, I don't know if nymphs are only female. I don't know if they have male ones, or at least I would think if there were, I don't think Persephone would be allowed anywhere near them, or maybe they won't allow Demeter's estate. So, really, Hades is the first man she's probably seen, and she thinks he's amazing. So, Demeter is probably gonna completely flip. Like, I've tried to keep Persephone away from men her whole life, and she's close with the one man that I hate. This is terrible.
That's right. You were going to talk a little bit more about why you thought that Demeter might hate Hades. I think you were going to talk about the fact that he might remind her.
Yeah, because I mentioned that, didn't I? I said that Demeter's, like, trauma from, like, the Titamaki might be because obviously Hades is, you know, the one, he says it himself, that he resembles Kronos the most, and the one person that was with Hera when she got ripped in half by Kronos was Demeter.
Yeah.
So maybe she hates Hades purely for the fact that he also unfortunately happens to look like Kronos, but then he doesn't do anything that particularly makes him as bad as Kronos, like, in the slightest. The only most Kronos thing we've seen Hades do the entire series is probably when he scooped out a dude's eyeball for threatening Persephone and taking lurid photos for a trashy tabloid.
Yeah.
Like, that's pretty mild, considering, like, Kronos straight up snapped a goddess in half and devoured 2 of his 3 children. That's quite mild.
Yeah. I think it comes down to like appearance, to looks. I think he just, maybe he looks too much like Kronos, and it reminds her, and maybe some of it too is just she equates, Zeus and Poseidon in their own ways are both sort of, they both have...
Yeah, like Artemis does. Like, she's just like, oh, I hate all 3 of them.
Yeah, exactly. It's probably that same sort of thing. Yeah.
I don't know, like, I've had this theory that, like, whatever lawyer that Persephone goes for, like, because I feel like Hades would not want her to go in blind. This guy would probably have, like, 5 or 6 lawyers be like, okay, these are the best lawyers that I can find because I'm the king. Like, pick one.
Sure.
And, like, I feel like Demeter would be like, I'm not having anything to do with this. I'm gonna go solo. I'm gonna try and represent myself and my daughter. And then she'll make everything worse.
Right.
Because, like, she's not really ready to accept that Persephone is no longer a child.
Yeah.
And, I think that's probably gonna backfire a lot. Because, like, almost everyone that knows Persephone, they love her because she was a child, but then, they know that, like... Just in the way that she acts, she's very naive, but that doesn't make her a child. That just makes her an adult that doesn't know how to make life choices because, again, of the way Demeter raised her.
Demeter also isn't really aware of Zeus's power struggles, or kind of what's going on in Olympus on a regular basis. She, in the way that maybe Hades would. Knowing that Zeus might, he's obviously trying to make an example of the both of them, and knowing that, what was discussed during that meeting that, the 3 kings had where they were going over the report about Persephone. They were talking about, this is an opportunity, Zeus was saying this is an opportunity for us to basically show our strength and, to earn respect and that sort of thing, when in reality he's just talking about himself. And Hades and Poseidon knew that. But Demeter doesn't...
Poseidon looked absolutely horrified. He was
sure.
He was like, what is this? Like,
sure, yeah.
What? And then he gives Hades that, like, look, like, what the hell's going on here?
Sure.
I hate not being told stuff.
Sure, yeah.
And then, like Hades just raises his eyebrow. He's like, where did you get all this information? It's complete rubbish. Like, I wonder if that would come up in the trial. Like, Hades would use, like, Zeus's evidence against Zeus. That would be hilarious. Because he does make that threat, doesn't he? Like, if this is the line you want to draw in the sand.
Yeah.
And he actually gets, like, the stars, like,
right.
Kronos, and he's like...
It's like a threat. It's very much a threat.
If you want to, like, push me...
Sure.
Like, we'll go. And, like, I think Zeus at that point, he was just like, oh, okay, maybe you just cool down and I'll bring it up another time until, like, you let me get away with it. Because I think that's probably what Hades has done, like, previously.
Yeah.
So now we have the cookie theories. So, we haven't talked about Hephaestus since, like, the beginning of the last segment. So, will Zeus banish Hephaestus from Olympus for helping Persephone and Hades? I feel like he's petty enough to do that. And obviously he got cross at Echo for simply allowing Hephaestus to see Hera after she had that awful flashback and opened one of her old injuries. So he obviously does not care about his... I guess Hephaestus might be younger than Ares, but obviously Hebe is the youngest.
Sure.
So far as we know. Like, so his second youngest son, he obviously does not care about. Ares, I think he does see as a threat, but only because, like, he straight up nearly flambéed him when he was a goose. So, I don't think he's threatened by the fact that Ares might want his power or anything. I think there's probably something else going on that Zeus doesn't like.
I think he's afraid of Apollo. I think he's afraid that Apollo wants his power. He might, because when he was thinking about, there was that section of panels where he was thinking about Persephone being a fertility goddess and thinking about who would, in theory, would potentially try and overthrow him, and he was thinking about his different sons or whatever, and Apollo did flash into his mind pretty much at the end and it seemed almost like he was trying to dismiss it. At the end he thought of Apollo and went,
like,
no,
it's not. That's a myth. It's not true.
No.
Like, it's an old wives' tale.
Yeah.
Can't possibly be true. But that's kind of like when you go into the kitchen to get a snack and you hear a noise and you're like, it can't be a mass murderer or something. It's probably just my mama's cat.
Sure.
Like, it's in that kind of like, oh, if I tell myself that, it must be true.
Sure.
Like, it's not like, like, for him, it's just like, oh, it can't be true. But, like, the amount of times this guy's had affairs, you would think that maybe he'd stop. Because, one day, someone's gonna overthrow him, just some random mortal will be like, hi, I'm your son.
Oh my gosh.
And then if they don't kill him, Hera will.
Oh my gosh, that's a nightmare.
Yeah, this guy really does it to himself, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And
I think the next thing we were going to talk about is the pomegranate, and whether or not the pomegranate is going to come into play during the trial.
There was a big thing about pomegranates ever since the episode with
it's been brought up,
and it came up in the first episode as well.
Well, I mean, everyone is under the assumption that Persephone took the pomegranate. And we talked about this previously, but I wonder if Hades knows that she took the pomegranate, or knows now, but going back, I wonder how the pomegranate will come into play, either during or before the trial. I am of the opinion that she again, I'm in agreement with probably some of the more I'm not going to say that, but I'm in agreement with a lot of people in like the Discord server and that sort of thing, in that I could maybe see her eating the pomegranate before the trial as a way to, like, even further prepare herself. But to be honest, I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think that she's told Hades about the pomegranate at this point, and she's got it in one way, shape, or form, basically in her pocket, so that if things go down, she has essentially an out. What do you think?
Because we've done this whole thing, and, like, I hate the pomegranate theories.
I do too.
Like, just, everyone's like, oh, she's got red eyes, pomegranate. Oh, this happened, pomegranate. Oh, this happened, pomegranate.
Geez. Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh, no, this is so irritating, please stop. But then, Hades could, because they were discussing it, weren't they, an episode before, and, Hades was answering all these questions Persephone had about the pomegranate, and, I think maybe at that point she could have been like, okay, Erebus gave me the pomegranate, I don't know what to do, so let's just keep it safe somehow. And I think maybe that's part of his plan, that he's got her the best lawyers, and if everything goes really awfully, he can just give her 6 seeds of pomegranate and, double check, this is no going back, do you want to do this?
Yeah.
Kind of thing, so he can protect her, because then she'll have diplomatic immunity. But I don't think for one moment, given all the emotional, like, safety and, like, the comfort they have with each other, she'd just, like, straight up be like, oh, yeah, by the way, I ate half of the pomegranate and I'm now, like, gonna be your queen. Like, that.
No, sure, I think they would discuss it. Yeah. I think they would discuss it before she did it. I agree with that. I am of the opinion that if it's going to come into play, it's something that they would have discussed previously, and it's something that she has in her back pocket as like a, push, worst case scenario type thing, to protect herself. Because Hades
like
mentions...
a reverse Uno card or something, like, no, you, scissors, basically. Because, like, when they first, like, saw the pomegranate, everyone was like, oh, she stole it, she's eaten it, she's stolen it. I was like, that doesn't seem in character for any of them. Like, Hades wouldn't take it. I mean, he might take it for safekeeping, because, like, he did say that, it's not grown for 100 years, and then all of a sudden it, like, pops a pomegranate, and it's the only fruit the tree has ever grown since he became king. So I think maybe it's being kept safe.
I agree.
But I don't think Persephone would just, like, straight up eat it.
You don't think she would... you mean like she would just... It would be something they would discuss first, and then she might eat it if she's decided... she has no other choice. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Like, if like, Zeus does something really stupid, and he's like, I know that you love my brother, or I know that I have to punish you, and, Demeter makes a fuss or something, and then Zeus ended up punishing both of them, they're obviously gonna have, like a recess or whatever it is to, like, discuss the final verdict, and then determine whether she's guilty or not, and then Hades will, like, have that break, like, with Persephone, and he'll talk, he'll be like, he said, in no way would I ever force someone to eat the pomegranate, because I want them to be respected, like, I would respect them, kind of a thing, and, like, it wouldn't be necessary for them to eat the pomegranate like I did.
Right.
But then he'd make it known that, if she chose that, he would accept it. But, like, he wouldn't force her to do it. So if he gave her the pomegranate and was like, are you absolutely sure you want to do this? And she said yes, he would accept it. Yeah, that's just so funny. Cats are just like Zeus.
Yeah.
This one small thing has inconvenienced me so much, I now hate it forever. So, what I originally said before your cat interrupted was, who will either side call for witnesses? Like, because, we don't really know. I mean, obviously, Hermes being, like, the deliverer of the gods kind of thing, that would make sense. Also the Fates, which brings us, like, to the next point, which is, will they call on the Fates for a tape? I feel like maybe they would, but then also it could backfire, because the Fates tape tends to show, like, the prophecies and stuff that they've foretold. But maybe, if they get, like, the prophecy where, like, Demeter was told about Persephone's destiny and, like, chose to ignore it, or, like, in other ways hinder her daughter, which would make her a danger, maybe that would make Demeter look more guilty than Persephone.
Right.
And then Persephone could say something about, because we know that Persephone's felt guilty, and that she wants to do something to, like, help, and that Demeter sort of, like, covered it up. So I guess maybe Demeter's punishment is going to be worse than Persephone's. But then Zeus, with the attitude that he has, I feel like maybe he'd just, like, slam them both.
Well, it depends on whether or not they believe that Demeter sheltering her played into the ultimate outcome of Persephone, doing her act of wrath or whatever. I wonder if they would consider those to be, in one way, shape, or form, two separate things, and that Demeter wouldn't necessarily be punished for that in the trial. Instead, I think the main focus is that an act of wrath was performed without approval from Zeus. And so I don't know if they would, punish Demeter for the build-up piece. I think it'll be like, you hid this from me. That's what she'll be punished for. You hid this from me. And Persephone will be punished because she, committed the act of wrath without Zeus's approval.
But then I feel like, because, this is a big trial, you'd have other people there that might call him out on it. So, wasn't it Eros's act of wrath was called out because, Zeus spotted it on, the video camera feed or something, and then Aphrodite calls her out because, Apollo and Artemis had a wrath.
Yeah.
And they didn't get in trouble at all. So, maybe if she's there at the trial, she'd be, calling him out because, again, his favorites have had wraths, and obviously, because he's suddenly decided he doesn't like Persephone and Demeter, maybe she doesn't deserve to get, punished as badly.
Sure, yeah. At minimum, yeah, but probably doesn't deserve to get punished at all. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So, do we have anything else to say on that, or is that it? Because I think the next bit is the myth segment.
Well, basically as an ending thing, who do you think is most likely to get the worst punishment? Do you think Demeter or Persephone? I am of the opinion that at the end, I believe that, based on what you and I were just speaking about, that Demeter would be the person who gets the most punishment. Even though Persephone committed the act of wrath, I think there's going to be some back and forth about, again, Zeus's favoritism and, but I think the ultimate
I have to agree
issue,
with you on that one, because...
All right. So for our myth section, we're talking about the Taking of Persephone. This is the myth that Hades and Persephone, what am I trying to say? Oh, I messed that up. The myth of Hades and Persephone is about love in Greek mythology. Okay, sorry. Our myth...
I mean, because we chose this one
we did.
Because I think we wanted one where, Hades and Zeus were, butting heads.
Yeah.
Which is kind of, there's no... I mean, there aren't... I think this is, the only one, apart from, other... references to, the Homeric teachings and, writings and stuff, where they're, butting heads, mainly because Zeus is king of the gods, and, he sent Hades away to the underworld, so they don't really have much of an interaction, but it's clear that, Zeus and Hades do butt heads whenever they come into contact with each other, so this was the only myth where Zeus and Demeter and Hades and Persephone are involved together. Unless we're talking, the Titan War, but obviously Persephone wasn't born then.
Well, as a side note, by the way, it seems like Zeus is jealous of Hades, just in general. Hades, earned the love and respect of Hera, as an example. Not by becoming king, but by, just the fact that, they shared something together. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I do, but then I think that is also part of, Zeus's mental illness. The
sure.
fact that, he does have mental trauma and some sort of, condition where he has to be better than everyone else because he's the golden child, he's the chosen one. And he may think that, like, having an emotional connection with someone makes you weak, or something like that, that it's kind of, like, below him because he's above everything. So the fact that his really, really injured brother, the one that he sent away, like, loved his wife and had an affair with his wife, which Zeus might actually know about and not care, because, you know, that's what he does to Hera. He has constant affairs.
Maybe that's where Hephaestus came from.
I mean, like, a lot of people were saying, oh, you know, like, Hephaestus is Hades' son.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't think so. I mean, like, I think that perhaps, you know, if there was a big argument and Zeus somehow injured Hephaestus, or maybe when people originally looked at the scars on Hera's body, they thought maybe that Hephaestus was born of C-section or something like that, or that, you know, Hera was pregnant with Hephaestus and then Kronos, like, snapped her in half, and that's why Hephaestus has, like, birth defects and needs his prosthetics. And, you know, kind of building off that, I had a theory that maybe, you know, Zeus did not want a defective son, that maybe he thinks that having disabilities is, you know, beneath what a son should be. So in the way that he rejected his brother for having, like, scars and also giving him the worst part of the kingdom, I guess, I think maybe, you know, Hades might have taken Hephaestus in and sort of given him his job in the underworld, and maybe helped him build prosthetics, because I don't think it's that far off, you know, a tech company building mobile phones. There's nothing to say that, like, you know, Hades wouldn't have helped Hephaestus with his gadgets and maybe building his own prosthetics.
Yeah, I agree.
Maybe that's another reason why Zeus might hate him, because he has the respect of people by, like, being compassionate and understanding.
Yeah.
And
Hades
Zeus doesn't really...
Yeah.
It's almost like he doesn't understand how that works.
Yeah. So we'll be talking about the myth of the taking of Persephone. This is the myth of Hades and Persephone that's essentially about love. Hades falls in love with Persephone and decides to kidnap her. The myth says that this was one of the rare times that he actually left the underworld, and that he traveled above ground to pursue her while she was gathering flowers in a field. Hades shared his secret with his brother Zeus, asking for help. So the two of them ultimately concocted a plan to trap Persephone. Zeus knew that Demeter would never allow the girl to leave and go and live with Hades, so ultimately he ended up suggesting abduction. As Persephone played with her companions, ultimately what they did is they caused the ground to split open beneath her. Persephone slipped beneath the earth, and Hades stole her to the underworld, where he ultimately made her his wife.
Now, the myth says that Persephone was very unhappy and fearful of him, but after much time she came to love Hades and happily lived with him. But, like, for me, with this myth, I think that actually, you know, if you live with someone who doesn't want you anywhere near men, they're going to tell you stories about how terrible men are.
Sure.
And obviously, you know, maybe that's why, you know, Persephone was absolutely terrified of Hades, this guy that kind of was there when she was swallowed up by the earth.
On top of maybe
she
perception.
Comes to love him.
On top of maybe the perception of Hades, at least in the way it you know, it sometimes was presented. Maybe Demeter presented Hades as this cold, uncaring person because he's, you know, because of who he was.
But it's quite funny considering that, you know, the ancients never saw Hades as evil at all. Like, he wasn't responsible for the deaths of mortals or the suffering. He was charged with shepherding the souls, which was a necessary and melancholy job. But, somebody had to do it, so Hades did it, and though he was gloomy and frightening because obviously he has, one of the most depressing realms and, a gross kind of a job, that could be understandable. So the next episode we'll be discussing Demeter, and she discovers what happened to her daughter.
Uh-oh.
So we'll actually be talking more about the taking of Persephone, in that as well. We'll probably reference it for next episode, because we're going to be focusing more on Demeter instead of just Persephone and Demeter.